Hi everyone, in this video we will understand what exactly a bootstrapped company is, right? The full video on this particular topic is available on my YouTube channel. You can find the link in my story. Now, what is bootstrapping? It is basically a process of starting and growing a particular venture with the lowest possible cost or a very little amount of money. So the entrepreneur he invests his personal finances, like अपने ही पैसे वो उसमें invest करता है, and as the time continues, as the business grows, he also reinvests the operating revenue of the company. Mark my words, I'm not talking about net profit, I'm talking about operating revenues. Right now, what are the examples of some bootstrapped successful companies? We know Apple, we know Microsoft, we know SAP, we know Oracle, we also know Dell Computers. So these are some of the examples, right? Now, what are the features, the major features of a bootstrapped company? The first thing is that they do not attract any outside investment. Second point is that they may face cash flow issues in the long run, because कैपेक्स तो हो जाएगा अरेंज, बट वर्किंग कैपिटल के टाइम पे बहुत सारे बूटस्ट्रैप्ड कंपनीज को प्रॉब्लम होती है, राइट? नाउ द थर्ड पॉइंट क्या है? थर्ड पॉइंट ये है कि जो इंटायर कंट्रोल रहता है कंपनी का, कंपनी के ऑपरेशंस का और बहुत सारे डिसीजन मेकिंग का भी, दैट रिमेन्स विद द एंटरप्रेन्योर और दैट रिमेन्स विद द फाउंडर ऑफ द कंपनी, right? Now, one more example is that bootstrapping allows flexibility in the growth, early growth phase. इनिशियली आपको फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी चाहिए होता है किसी भी बिजनेस को ग्रो करने के लिए. अगर आप किसी से इन्वेस्टमेंट ले रहे हो, मे इट बी इक्विटी और मे इट बी डेट, सो इन दैट केस व्हाट हैपेंस, यू हैव टू कंसिडर देयर ओपिनियन ऑल्सो. एंड अगर आपने बहुत सारी जगह से ले लिया है इन्वेस्टमेंट थ्रू इक्विटी, तो वो तो बहुत ही डिफिकल्ट हो जाता है, बिकॉज वेन यू आर डाइल्यूटिंग इक्विटी दैट मीन्स यू आर डाइल्यूटिंग द ओनरशिप ऑफ द कंपनी एज वेल, राइट? सो वो तो एक रीज़न है. वन मोर थिंग इज दैट, वन मोर फीचर इज दैट द bootstrapped companies, they have to rely on the personal finances or personal savings or customer funding or the personal debt of the entrepreneur, right? सो चार बेसिक फीचर्स क्या क्या हैं? पहला है कैश फ्लो इश्यूज होते हैं लॉन्ग रन में. सेकंड है कि दे डू नॉट अट्रैक्ट एनी आउटसाइड इन्वेस्टमेंट. थर्ड है कि इट हैज़ टू टोटली रिलाई ऑन द पर्सनल फाइनेंसेस, पर्सनल डेट एंड कस्टमर फंडिंग, राइट? एंड थर्ड एंड फोर्थ पॉइंट क्या है? फोर्थ पॉइंट इज दैट it allows flexibility for the business to grow in the early growth stage, right? When you need a lot of flexibility, अगर ये काम नहीं कर रहा है तो हम दूसरा कुछ कर लेंगे, right? That flexibility has to be there, and the flexibility comes to you with total ownership, right? Now let's understand what are the six major bootstrapping techniques. The first is that you have to take lease equipments, right? When you are not purchasing, when you are not owning any equipment or any fixed asset, so you don't have to pay a lot of capex, right? So that way you can save some money and you can use, you can get the equipments on lease basis, right? Second is that you can buy used equipments, जिसको हम लोग सेकेंड हैंड बोलते हैं, राइट? पहले यूज हुआ था वो एंड यू आर बाइंग इट फॉर द सेकेंड टाइम. सो इन दैट वे यू कैन गेट ऑल द necessary equipments at a very lesser price, so that way you can reduce the cost. Basically इसमें आपको क्या समझना है, what you have to understand in this particular bootstrapping technique, how you can cut the cost, right? What are the major areas from which you can cut down the cost or cut down the expenses, right? Third point क्या है? You can hire interns. Like instead of having full-time employees, you can hire interns. So either some of them will work for free, or you have to pay lesser amount as compared to an employee, right? Now fourth point क्या है? You can use co-working space. What is co-working space? In the same area, two or three companies are operating, right? Maybe on shift basis, maybe on days basis. So that way what happens, you can avoid some unnecessary expenditure, right? And also one more very important thing जो कि सबको याद रहेगा, you have to obtain the payment in advance. Now how to remember this particular point? if you have ordered anything online from a bootstrapped or a new company, basically a new startup, so what happens, there are options of payment. Cash on delivery hota hai, then you have online payment options. So in case of cash on delivery, you will see there is like 30 or 40 rupees extra they are charging, right? Why do they do this? Because they have to get the payment in advance, so that people will pay online to save that 30 40 rupees, right? So, what are the six bootstrapping techniques? First is that you can get the equipments on lease. Second, you can buy the pre-used equipments, right? Or second-hand equipments you can get. Now, the third point is that you can avoid unnecessary expenditure. Then what? You can use co-working space. किसी और के साथ आप अपना working space share कर रहे हो. Then you can hire interns, right? And also the last one is that you can obtain the payment in advance. So like that you can get your money, like you can get the money for sure. ये बहुत सारे टेक्निक्स हैं श्योर शॉर्ट मनी पाने के, राइट? नाउ लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट आर द एडवांटेजेस ऑफ बूटस्ट्रैपिंग. द फर्स्ट एडवांटेज क्या होना चाहिए, खुद सोचो एक बार. हम लोग इक्विटी डाइल्यूट नहीं कर रहे हैं, सारा इक्विटी अपने पास है. इक्विटी मतलब वोटिंग राइट्स, राइट? इक्विटी शेयर का क्या मतलब होता है कि सारा वोटिंग राइट्स हमारे पास है, विच मीन्स द कंप्लीट ओनरशिप, द कंप्लीट कंट्रोल ऑफ द कंपनी इज विद अस, इज विद द एंटरप्रेन्योर, राइट? नाउ द सेकेंड पॉइंट इज दैट कि जो इन्वेस्टर है, if we are not having any investor, like we are not having any outside investment, so we don't have to care about the opinion of the investor. Otherwise जो भी investor opinion देता है अपना, we have to consider that also, right? But in case of a bootstrapped company, we are the owners, so we don't have to worry about the investor's opinion, right? Now, the third point is that most of the bootstrapped companies rely on the existing resources only without taking any loans, right? So that reduces the burden of paying off the loan and paying off the interest as well, right? Now, third point क्या होगा इसमें? We have lesser money, right? We have put our own money into the business. So that way we will understand like how to spend smartly. So it creates a habit of smart spending, right? कम पैसा है हमारे पास, so we will understand कि कैसे खर्च करने से बहुत optimum utilization होगा of this money, of this lesser amount of money, right? So it creates what? It creates very smart spending habits. And the next point is also related to the previous point कि अगर entrepreneur के पास lack of initial funding है, right? We don't have much initial funding, so obviously he will start thinking about the creative ways to solve a particular problem. And I think that's how most of the the problem statement of any business gets introduced like that only, right? बहुत कम चीज़ें हैं हमारे पास, so we start thinking कि इसको कैसे optimally use करना है, right? Now one more point is that the entrepreneur gets a lot of experience by spending his own money, right? Now this is applicable only for those people who have got lots and lots of money to experiment, right? Because if the business you have started gets failed, so in that case what happens, your own money is going at risk. You don't have to pay off the money, right? Because अगर business में loss हुआ and you also have a loan on your head, so that creates again extra burden, right? But in case of bootstrapping, that is not an issue for the entrepreneur, right? Now when we are talking about a particular startup, so it obviously हमारे दिमाग में पहला word क्या आता है? Innovation, right? There may be some kind of innovation involved, some kind of intellectual property might be there, right? So when a company is bootstrapped and the founder or the owner of the company is having the entire equity with him, so in that case what happens, he reserves all the rights to the developments, he reserves all the rights to the ideas which is being implemented in the business, right? सो जितने भी इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टीज़ हैं, आपने कोई भी पेटेंट करवाया, कोई चीज़ आपने, आपके पास कोई भी ट्रेडमार्क है, सो दैट रिमेन्स विद द bootstrapped company only, yani ki that remains with the entrepreneur himself, right? Now वन मोर बेनिफिट इज दैट, बुक्स में तो बहुत सारे दिए गए हैं बट वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड एवरीथिंग, बिकॉज वी आर गोइंग टू रिमेंबर ओनली 5 or 6 points, राइट, एंड दैट इज सफिशिएंट फॉर एग्जाम. नाउ द next point is that when you are trying to get other investment, when you are trying to get outside funding, so in that case that takes a lot of energy, that takes a lot of time, right? So in case of bootstrapping, if the entrepreneur is having money to invest in the business, so in that case his entire focus goes into the business only, how to expand the business, right? How to do the product development, how to do the sales, how to do the marketing and all those things, right? Doesn't have to look for getting like look for the ways to get the other investments, outside investments, right? So these are some of the advantages of bootstrapping. Now coming to the disadvantages, कुछ भी बिना पढ़े we can understand. The first disadvantage is that it may have to face lack of cash flow in future, right? As the business grows, it may face lack of cash flows, working capital की कमी हो सकती है, right? Now, so when you have lack of cash flow, that would directly impact the growth of the business. So the growth of the business will be hampered if you don't have enough cash flow or enough working capital in your hand in case of bootstrapped companies. So this is one of the biggest disadvantages. The second point is that I think we all face this, whoever is going through any kind of financial burden faces this particular thing, that like in most of the cases हर दिन नए नए challenges आते रहते हैं, right? The ability to handle stressful challenges, that gets checked every day, because every day the bootstrapped company faces different challenges, right? And third point is also related to that, कि जो entrepreneur होता है he assumes all the financial risks by himself, because he doesn't have anyone else who can share the financial burden, right? Who can support him in that situation, because he's all alone in the financial situation, right? Coming to the fourth point, it says that in case of specifics of bootstrapping, what generally happens, implementing one's idea totally, and along with that attracting outside investment, these two things cannot go hand in hand. If they are going together, if they are happening parallelly, then it creates a lot of mental stress for the entrepreneur to implement his own ideas, and also to to make a return on the investor's money, right? So it becomes very difficult for the entrepreneur. बहुत सारे एडवांटेजेस हैं, बट देर आर ओनली 4 डिसएडवांटेजेस विच यू कैन राइट ऑन योर ओन, राइट? एक बार आप बुक से पढ़ लो, यू विल बी एबल टू डू दिस. Now let's understand what are the stages of bootstrapping, right? The first stage is the beginner stage. In the beginner stage, what happens, the entrepreneur puts his own money in the business, which is generally his personal finances, or maybe personal debt, or maybe something he borrows from his friends, right? In many of the cases, if you watch Shark Tank, then you might be knowing that many of the entrepreneurs, they keep on continuing their job, and simultaneously they incorporate the company and they start working for their business, right? So this is the beginner stage. Now coming to the second stage, which is the customer funded stage. So in this particular stage, which is customer funded stage, as the name only tells you that इस stage में जो भी आपके पास पैसा आता है from the customer or from the client, that again gets reinvested in the company. So in the beginning of today's class, we had studied that the operating revenue gets reinvested in the company, right? Operating revenue कहाँ से आता है? That comes from the customers or the clients only, right? So the customer funded stage talks about that particular thing. Now coming to the last stage, which is the credit stage. This is the third and the last stage, the credit stage. So this involves the entrepreneur focusing on the funding specific activities, right? Funding specific activities matlab he's upgrading the equipments, he's hiring staff. So generally what happens, in the credit stage, the bootstrapped company steps out of the comfort zone and starts taking loans, or tries to find the venture capitalist who can invest in the venture, or who can invest in the bootstrapped company, right? So these are some of the these are the three stages of bootstrapping. Now let's understand, why do people generally choose bootstrapping? What can be the major reasons? Now just pause the video and think for a minute. You can find two or three points on your own, right? आई होप यहाँ तक सबको समझ में आया. Then let's start the bootstrapping strategies, right? So strategies क्या क्या होनी चाहिए? The first strategy has to be that whatever product or service you are developing or you are providing to people, that should solve one problem, right? Because whenever you go for pitching your business to any investor, there has to be a problem statement कि आपका business क्या problem solve कर रहा है, right? So it has to solve some kind of problem. Second is that you need to have a proper business plan. Business plan अगर नहीं होगा, then you cannot you cannot grow the business in a systematic way, right? Now the third point क्या है? Third point है, you have to get a proper mentor for yourself, जिनको आप एडवाइजर्स इक्विटी दे के आप रख सकते हो अपने पास, who would guide you throughout the entire process. And yes, this person has to be somebody from that field who is having the experience and also the expertise, right? ये आपको कैसे याद रखना है? If you have ever watched Shark Tank on Sony Live, then Namita Thapar is there who keeps on telling you ये मेरी expertise नहीं है, so for that reason I'm out. So why she is getting out of that particular deal? Because she doesn't know, so she cannot mentor the entrepreneur on growing the business, right? So this is the third point. Now the fourth point is that ऑपरेटिंग रेवेन्यू वाला कॉन्सेप्ट आ जाएगा, राइट? कि यू हैव टू री इन्वेस्ट द ऑपरेटिंग रेवेन्यू, और इन जब थोड़ा सा कंपनी ग्रो कर जाए, सो इन दैट केस यू कैन री इन्वेस्ट द नेट प्रॉफिट अगेन इन द बिजनेस, राइट? नाउ the last point is that you have to use the most of the networking opportunities. You have to communicate with the network of personal contacts. You have to communicate with a lot of people. You have to be in touch with a lot of people to get the opportunities to मतलब ज़रूरत पड़े तो you can get your work done by those people, right? So these are some of the bootstrapping strategies, right? I hope you have understood this particular video. If you really find this video interesting and helpful, then do write to me in the comment section below, so that I'll be motivated to upload more such videos on my Instagram reel and also on my YouTube channel. Yes, like the video, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. And yes, help me reach 10K subscribers very soon.